Welcome to Go For Your Life. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving me your listening ears. Woohoo! This is a podcast for everyone, about everything, and it's to encourage, inspire, uplift you to go for your life. And it is presented and hosted by myself, Caro, and my sweet dog Sparky. Give it up for him. I hope you're ready. Enjoy. So welcome back to another episode of Go For Your Life. And it is the annual, regular episode that I always do with the beautiful Barbara Berger. Yay. Thank you so much for being here, Barbara. So lovely.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes. I mean, look, it comes to the end of the year and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I need to chat with Barbara because she's the one that, I just feel like it's the best way to start the year is with you. So I'm really, really grateful that you're here. And yeah, I just thought like this year, I think it's been quite a year for many people. So I thought maybe we could quickly do look back at the year, how it's been for you. And then I'd love to dive in to talk about the mental laws, the free ebook that you wrote. And I have a few questions from reading it myself. And then we have some questions from listeners. So anyway, I'm excited. So Barbara, 22, the year of the tiger. How was it? How was it for you?
We're holding on. We're hanging in there, right? Yeah. I would say enlightenment or bust. That's my motto.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
So it doesn't really matter what the year is, what the day is, what the week is. It's all about raising our level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we do that? So that's the man's eternal quest, actually. Well, actually, in terms of man's eternal quest, I just finished. It's soon going to come out here I live in Denmark, in Copenhagen, Denmark. Mm-hmm. So I've written a book called, my international bestseller is called The Road to Power, Fast Food for the Soul. That book that's how you found me.
Yeah.
The book has been published in 30 languages and sold about 1 million copies worldwide. So people know me for that book, but people have always asked me, well, how did you find all this out, Barbara? What's your story? And whenever I start to tell about my life, people always say to me, oh, you must write it down. So this year I did write it down. And the book is called My Road to Power, Sex, Trauma, and Higher Consciousness.
Wow.
And it's going to come out anyway in Danish in Denmark in 2023. And the English version, the other language versions, I don't know yet, but when I know. But anyway, apropos enlightenment or bust. That's what this book is about. The thing, the soul evolution that the journey that I've been on, and the traumas, the challenges. So this year is just another year or more of that.
Because do you relive it when you write it down?
To a certain degrry. It was even worse when I read it.
Yeah. I hear people say that before. Yeah.
But I can see, because I have lived so long now and I have been through so many really traumatic events. And so each one is like a sort of has its own sort of logic, the learning of the different events that we've been through. As you know, I ran away from home when I was very young, when I was 18. I grew up in America, American born, and lived in Washington, D.C. And my father was a very high man in the Pentagon, in the military. And I had a boyfriend who got drafted to go to Vietnam. That was the time of the Vietnam War. And so I ran away from home because being anti-Vietnam War was not very popular in my family. And at that time, as a draft dodgers, people who you went to prison for 5 years if you didn't go. So Steve and I, we
serious business
went underground, and we were in many places, and we ended up, that's how I got to Scandinavia. We got political asylum in Sweden, actually. So I lived there for 2 years before I came to Denmark. So that's how the book starts, with that and all the things that happened. after that.
Yeah, because I think this probably is this the first book that is like really autobiography
Yes,
style
it's
in a
the
way, because
first.
most of your books are about, coaching and, this is the
Exactly.
first one
No,
that
no,
is
this is
about
the
you.
only one.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Getting
Uh,
personal. Barbara, getting personal. No, but I mean, you have an incredible story to share. So I think we spoke about this last year as well, that you were,
Okay. We're
starting
working
to
on it. Yeah.
exactly. So it's beautiful. And so is it like, have you finished it now, Barbara? And
It's
are you?
done.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
done.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the other
Okay.
thing, but the thing that I've added since last year, when we talked about it, it's like there's a lot of things. It's interesting how our past changes. When you
Mm.
look back, depending on where you are in the evolution of your own consciousness, I always
Wow.
say that my past is not what it used to be.
Mm.
So in the story, because I had this my son Tim Ray, who I've written books with and who I work with, and he
Mm-hmm.
translates my books to Danish. He was editing this book and he kept saying to me, yeah, but you can't, it's such an exciting story. You can't give it away in the story.
Mm.
And looking back at this is what happened. So he took all of that out.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things, like my interpretation of it today is different than I know more to now. I mean, like for example,
Mm.
coming from a dysfunctional family and what that means
Yeah.
and all this. So I now have added a section, it's called Afterthoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I take a look back with what I know today
Mm.
and tell the readers what I found out because the book ends in 1986, so there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
has happened since the story of the book
Yeah.
ends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It ends actually when I wrote The Road to Power.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? All the other books I've written and what I have learned. So I don't know. I think readers will think that's interesting if they
Yeah,
get that.
absolutely. No, absolutely. And it's also amazing because so what you're saying is your book, The Road to Power, is a book you wrote in the late 80s.
Mhm.
Because it's so like
No,
it's
no, I
so.
didn't write. I didn't write The Road to Power. The Road to Power it was actually came to me. It was delivered to me in
Mhm.
1994. But the book
Okay.
ends. The book ends in 86 when this great awakening, which is actually what the mental laws is about,
Hmm.
understanding the way the mind works, the key
Yeah.
to freedom and self-empowerment.
Hmm.
Those were the years where I discovered it. But the book actually came to me. Did I ever tell you that story about
Yeah,
the road?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You told me it just
Yeah,
came through
about how it was
when you
delivered
read
to
it.
me.
Yeah.
That was in 94. And so in the book itself, the discovery of the power of the mind was in 86. And kind of the narrative ends there, but then there's an epilogue where I tell about the road to power, and
Yeah.
then it ends. And then there comes another one, this afterthought. So
Yeah.
it's
Really
complicated.
interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow. I can't wait to read this one. It's gonna be
Well, actually,
knowing you, like, like
if you
having
have
known you now.
time, I can send you the manuscript in
I'd
English.
love to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love to.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. No,
Christmas present for
that's
you.
a nice greasy present for sure. Because I think also, I mean, what you're sort of saying is also like the past changes over time, I guess, like the more you have your own evolution, the more you look back at your past and the past changes. Do you feel that is there also some kind of is the power also that you can change your past if you just, do the work in a way?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, my new book, the latest book, besides this about my life story, um, this is going to be coming out in English in a couple months in
Healthy models for
2020.
relationships.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I would say that all the things I have learned about in terms of what healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, constructive communications, all of these things that
Hmm.
I would say if you look at my story, the background I come from, all of these things I didn't know back then.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
didn't have the tools to deal with a dysfunctional family I came from. I had a mother who was a really tyrant, a bully, really a mean piece of work. I was like, yeah, but she was, and I didn't have the tools to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so the things that I have learned, the therapy I've done myself, the studies I've done myself. So because of what we experience, we actually we're motivated to learn more. Most of us. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the people who come to me for coaching or therapy or whatever you want to call it, they come because they're in crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't go
Exactly.
for help because we're feeling great. We go for help
Mm-hmm.
because we feel like shit, to put it
Yeah.
mildly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I always say, and you can see it in my book too, that there's nothing like a good crisis to, you know. So
Yeah.
so crisis is actually, you could say, the karmic gifts we have with us that
Mm-hmm.
that put us in these different situations that cause us
Yeah.
to develop and grow. So there's nothing like a good crisis.
Exactly. Yeah.
So every time a new person walks in the door, and I have, as you know, talked to hundreds and thousands of people over the years, I
Mm-hmm.
know that even though they feel like shit, that this is the beginning of
Yeah.
a journey for them, and they all get better.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also that it's a time of transformation, isn't it? And I
Mhm.
think that the hurt and the pain and anything that's happening is also eventually for the good, I guess. But do you feel like something that when I listen to your story and the way you found yourself and how you dealt with it, like, did you also have a coach and a teacher that were you really coming to these teachings yourself, or coming to this involvement
I
of yourself?
definitely didn't have one coach or teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so, and back then in the 60s, it wasn't really like that.
No.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but actually, the guy I was with, Steve and I, just to sort of explain, to answer what you said, we were underground for a couple of years, and we had been in several countries, and we tried to go to Europe, and we got deported back, and then we fled to Canada, and we ended up in 1966 in Mexico. And we had hitchhiked from New York to Mexico City, and we had $150. That was all we had. And we didn't speak Spanish, and we were like desperate. We didn't know what to do. We were really, really lost. I was only 20 at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
we had been taking a lot of drugs, and we were like, this was higher consciousness, but the whole world was like, we were scared, really, and
Mm-hmm.
desperate. And so the day we arrived in Mexico City, we were sitting on a park bench in the middle of this park in Mexico City and just staring out into the blue and thinking, what the fuck are we gonna do now?
Mm-hmm.
Lovely
Yeah.
cats you have.
Yeah. I'm currently normally my co-host is Sparky, but I'm currently in London and I'm cat sitting. So there's a really lovely cat that is also really enjoying your story, Barbara. Sorry.
But
Yeah, go
anyway,
back.
so to go back, so we were sitting, and just to not to drag it out too long. So we were sitting in this park, didn't know
Mm-hmm.
anyone, had just arrived after a grueling 3-week hitchhiking journey from New York to Mexico City. All kinds of really traumatic stuff happened. We had $150, and we were just sitting there. And then we noticed there was this very tall, very special looking guy going around in the park sketching people's faces.
Mm.
He looked like he was sort of came out of a Dostoevsky novel, very tall and very thin with a little goatee. And then he came
Yeah.
over to us and he said, May I sketch your faces? You're so beautiful, the two of you." And we
Mm.
said, "Go ahead," you
Yeah.
know. And then
Go ahead.
he sat down on the grass before us, and he had this big sort of sketch block, and he took his thing out and he started drawing our faces. And then all of a sudden he put it down and he said to us, "What are you doing here?" And up until that point in time, we never told anybody that we were running away from the U.S. Army, that we were
Mhm.
on the run, that we were scared. And,
Mhm.
we always had some story, or we're students, or
Yeah.
for some reason or other, I just started talking and told them the truth. I told them we
Yeah.
were against the Vietnam War, that Steve had gotten drafted, that we had no money, that we were on the run, that we were scared to death. We did. And then he just was sort of silent. And then he said, "I think you're doing the right thing. You don't have to worry anymore. You can go home to Sweden with me. I'll take care of you."
Wow.
And it turned out that he was a very, very famous Swedish artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he did take us home with him to Sweden. It also turned out that his brother was one of the leading journalists in Sweden's biggest newspaper, Dagens Nyheter. And
Wow.
so he took us back to Sweden. And we became like heroes all of a sudden because Sweden was a neutral country at that time and was very anti-American and against the Vietnam War. So we were sort of like, we were on TV and all these things. And then it was like, they got us a place to live and we got political asylum so we could stay in Sweden. But I was so traumatized, still the age of 20, after all that had happened. I had run away from home when I was 18.
Yeah.
So as a kind of self-therapy, to answer your question, it was before you went to someone. So I decided that the only way I could get better was that I should write it down for myself, the journey that we had been on.
Yeah.
So I started writing down about, being against the Vietnam War and blah, 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 and how we ran away, the whole story. And there was a guy, a friend of ours, who visited us. And one day he said to me, he saw that I was always writing. What are you writing? And I said, I'm just writing what happened to us.
Yeah.
And then he said, oh, can I see it? And I thought, sure, go ahead. And then so I gave it to this guy, and then without asking me, he gave it to one of Sweden's biggest publishers.
Wow.
Who then contacted me and said that they wanted to publish the book.
Story. Yeah. Wow.
So I really went from lowly to whole. I mean, then I became this really well-known, famous person.
Yeah.
As all this happened in a very short time. So when I actually came to Denmark, the book came out in Denmark and Sweden and Scandinavia. I was really famous in Denmark before I even came here. So the whole thing was just like, and I was so young, and it was like, what's going on
What's
here?
happening here? Yeah. Wow.
So,
yeah, that's really.
So the whole thing was like, there was all these articles in the newspaper that she has rebelled, the young America rebelled against her father in the Pentagon, young American. I mean, it was like the newspapers were really after me. And
yeah, I told you this before, there should be a movie and I want to play you. Like, really.
That would be great.
I want to play you.
One of my biggest fans, now she's passed away, but she said immediately, she's actually the only one who's read this book so far, that it has to be a movie.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, this is a Netflix special. If this isn't a Netflix special, what is? No, it's an amazing story. And I think that, and it's so beautiful that you really, you've gone through so much traumatic experiences yourself, and now you're also, I feel like you're really using that to help others. Also, you're of service of others now, like with your books, with your coaching. Like, it's just that's an amazing thing.
But most people don't know about my background, but they will find out when this book comes out. Because most people are just so surprised when they hear, no, really? Is that you? You did all that?
Yeah. Because do you feel, is that a big deal for you that now your story is going to come out? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, ask me when it comes out. haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah.
It's usually difficult. I mean,
it must be like, it's like,
but also every time I write a book, it's always difficult when it comes. I mean, it's a very public thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, I guess in a way this is even more public because it's all a very personal story now as well.
But I mean, my motivation for all of my books, including this one, is to comfort and encourage people who are having trouble or who are really challenged. So my whole motivation has always been that by sharing either all, like the mental laws, all the techniques that are in the Road to Power books and so on, I've really been challenged. What did I do? And when I have found things, I mean, the same, you're doing the same. When we find stuff that works.
Yeah, we like to spread the word.
Yeah, but also it's love in action. It's karma yoga. I mean, that we want to do what we can, where we are, with the knowledge and tools that we have to ease human suffering. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, that's it. That's what we're here to do. Really. I mean, definitely. And before I'd like to dive into mental laws, I just wanted to ask you, because you speak to a lot of people, you're doing a lot of coaching. are things changing a little bit for people? Are we getting out of that sort of COVID rut, or is it getting worse? Or like, what is your sort of, overall view of how people are doing at the moment? Like,
People are really challenged, but it's not the same as COVID. I mean,
mm-hmm.
the lockdown, at least, I mean, unless there comes another wave now where when you hear about what's going on in China, who knows? But anyway, right now, again, I don't know how it is in Holland, or in England, but it's open here in Denmark. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no more restrictions of any kind.
Same. Yeah.
And I mean, some people are still getting it as far. I mean, but there's no place you can go and get tested anymore. You can do self-testing, but
yeah.
so, but the other things that, I mean, you're in England, and all of Europe, because of the war in Ukraine. I mean, and the energy crisis and all this stuff, man. We've got a whole other bag of tricks now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So really, really bad energy right now because of that. So it's really important.
That's something you were mentioning last year as well. Like, people are already challenged, and then on top of that, there is the sort of, I guess, the outside challenge of COVID or the war, or everything else that's going on. So it's like a double challenge, nearly, for people. Yeah, that's really difficult. I feel that too. I feel like lots and lots of people are struggling, like I think in the cities as well as as in the country. I mean, it's
well, I mean, you're in England, as far as I can see from listening to BBC News. It sounds like that there's really a lot of stuff going on in the UK.
There's so much going on. There's so much going on in the UK. Yeah.
And so a lot of people are very financially challenged also.
Yeah. I mean, they have a saying here now: eating or heating.
Yeah, exactly. It's,
like things like that. And that's, for me, it's just beyond. No, and I think that's why I think it's great that there's people like you out there who can, at least, give some guidance and coach people through, because I think if there was ever a time that we really needed people like you and having a good coach, it's now. Time is now for having to.
Well, in terms of making money, I know that's one of the things you wanted to talk about. That we have to be aware, especially people who are sort of like you and me, who are very idealistic, and we have all these offerings, things that we want to share with people. It's important to understand that. I don't know if you have read my book, Find and Follow Your Inner Compass. I talk about it in that book, but that we have to be realistic and understand in terms of money and finances, that we can't always live and make enough money by just doing our passion. It's really a big thing for most of us.
Yeah.
So therefore, I have divided it up, and there's your passion, and then there's survival. And survival has to come first. I mean, you have to live in order to do anything.
Yeah.
So quite a few of my clients now who are trying to start up new things or have their own business, which has failed because of the recession or this kind of thing, that I try to, soothe them enough and say, it's not a failure. It's the way the world situation is right now.
Yeah.
And you have to go back to, what can I do to make enough money to just survive to begin with? Yeah. And that's, again, it's not always an easy thing to recognize, but it's sort of like Buddha at the gas pump. You got to do what you got to do to pay the rent and buy food. And if you got kids, to feed your kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And I, again, you'll see that when you read my life story. That was really a big challenge for me. I was a single parent with three children.
Yeah.
And had been so idealistic, and we had a health center and macrobiotics and all that stuff, and we had a health food shop, and then it all crashed and burned when I collapsed and all kinds of stuff. We went bankrupt and so on. And then when I became a single parent with these kids, how the hell was I going to survive? So I have had this experience up close and personal, and I know that you have it too. All the people like us who are doing these different offerings, which are great stuff, we still have to survive.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we don't beat ourselves up and we don't criticize ourselves and we're not down on ourselves because we can't suddenly do it. I'm going to go online and I'm going to make a ton of money. Drop that
Yeah.
one. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Because in a way, it's rare to just make money from your passion, is what you're saying,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
I mean, I know how many years it took me. I mean, I worked as a copywriter for many years,
Yeah.
doing business communications for big companies, writing in English.
Yeah.
And I started making so much money doing that I began to make enough so I could invest in my company, Beam Team Books, and publish books and do all the stuff that I'm now doing today.
Yeah.
It took me many years. So first I had the one, and then I started doing the other, and the balancing between the survival and investing and promoting my passion, it took a long time.
Yeah.
But what about you?
No, I think like I definitely think that it's, I agree with you, and I think it's something to. And I think it also comes and goes, there's a time where, you can live from your passion and everything is fine. But then, yeah, you can fall back to like, oh shit, I'm back to survival again. And I think you really helped me at the time as well with that, that model of survival and passion.
Yeah, because that was when you came back, when you moved back to Holland and suddenly COVID came. I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was
Left
difficult.
Lisbon, and it was like, oh, and suddenly there was lockdown. All your big plans, you couldn't do any of it.
No, yeah, and it was like quite difficult to sort of just get your head around. It was really difficult, and it is in general, like, yeah, it is. And also I think a lot of people with these kind of creative heads find it difficult to just have a full-time job, or
really difficult. I agree.
So it's but I think choosing survival is always really important. And I think also what you're saying about just standing with that in pride as well, like, yeah, I have this job, but that's because of this job I can do this, I can do other things.
I mean, in other words, it hopefully shouldn't be either or.
Yeah.
But it might be for a while only. I mean, it depends on your life circumstances and how many mouths you have, how many kids you have, what, but so survival is number one. It's just the way life is. Every person on the planet has to survive to do anything.
Yeah.
So the rent and the food, that's sort of. But the other thing that actually is a part of that mix too is when people come to me, I also can be rather tough with them on, it's a lifestyle choice too. I mean, if you have a very high the level of consumption, I mean, how fancy does your place of residence have to be? How much money do you have to spend on? So again, if you want to be more free to build on your passion, you got to cut the other stuff away.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be strict with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think once you said this thing as well, which I always think of that a lot, is there is enough for everyone. Because I think a lot of
we live in an infinite universe. I
think that a lot of people forget that, though. Like a lot of people think like, oh no, like I'm not gonna make it, or I'm not gonna survive, or because it is a hard world out there, I think.
Well, that's also again where we come back to the mental laws that we have to understand that whatever we focus our attention on grows. That's one of these universal principles that's in that book. When we come to that. But the point is here that in every situation, you always have a choice. No matter what the reality is in front of your nose, you always have a choice. Am I going to focus on everything about this situation that's negative, that I don't like, that scares me, that's frightening, blah, blah, blah? Or am I going to focus on same situation, the potential, everything that's positive here? What can I learn? How can I grow because of this? So this choice, whether we're talking about finances or people or whatever, is what determines your life. And until we learn that we're the only thinkers in our minds and therefore the only ones who can make this choice.
Yeah.
That's self-empowerment. But until we learn that, we are a victim.
Of the mind.
Consciously, we are victims of outside circumstances, other people's thoughts and beliefs, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why this book, The Mental Laws, which I'm giving away for free,
Yeah.
it's so important, this information. It's the key to freedom.
Yeah.
To understand it really, and to take your power back and start doing that. So in terms of the prosperity vibe, or the gratitude vibe, or whatever your situation is, to focus on the good that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about vibrational frequencies. When you focus on the high vibration, which is unconditional love, which is gratitude, which all of the good feelings, that's a very, very high frequency, the highest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of law of attraction, your frequency, you're like a radio tower, you're sending this signal out in the universe. You're going to attract people, circumstances, and events that match your frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have good energy, good things come to you. It's really always so surprising to me. I would really like to share this. When people start going to me for coaching, usually pretty quickly, like after 3 or 4 sessions, they start to work on this. And suddenly they come in the door like the wildest, most amazing things happen. Somebody shows up, they meet somebody, so they get a job, or things that they definitely couldn't conceive of. And they always say to me, Barbara, how could that be? And I said, it's because you're doing the inner work. It's because you're becoming conscious of the vibrational frequency that you're sending out in the universe. So it's important to understand that when you have the low vibrational frequency, when you focus on the negative and everything that can go wrong, and catastrophic thinking, and I'll never make all that stuff, that's a very low frequency. And unfortunately, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then you attract again people, situations, and circumstances that match that frequency.
Exactly.
So it's really, really, really important to know this stuff.
Yeah. And to work, but I guess it's also like to know the inner work, like to know, because that's something that you wrote also in the Mental Laws, which I really liked, is that sort of as soon as you kind of understand how the mind works, you also understand that because of the mind, you are experiencing life as you are, like if so it really comes from.
That you're not a victim. You're not, well, again, as long as you're unconscious of these mechanisms, you are an innocent victim of mechanisms that you don't understand. I mean, we have to understand that every single human being is programmed from birth with the belief systems, thought patterns of their family, where they grow up, the society they live in. So it's not something that we're aware of. We all have this built-in programming. So, but waking up is becoming aware of this mechanism and being able to step back and look at your belief systems and then sort of clean up in the mess. And is this serving me or not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because that's something that you describe in the Mental Laws as well, is very much the victim of the mind versus the master of the mind, right? Because could you explain it in like how that works? How do we go?
So let's just go back for a bit. So for people who are not familiar with this concept, I call this mental laws. Let's just talk about first, what is a law? If we go back to sort of the scientific basis of law, if we take, there are physical laws. For example, the law of gravity is a physical law. It's an automatic mechanism that's always functioning and that everyone is affected by. So in other words, if you stand on top of a 10th floor building and jump off, you're going to fall to the ground. No matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States, if you're the cleaning woman. It has nothing, it's not personal, it's a law. And it also is, the law of gravity is in operation even if you don't know about it. You can't stand up there and jump off and say, oh my God, I didn't know
that.
Okay. So that's what I mean by laws. Laws are impersonal, automatic mechanisms that are always in operation and that are applied to everyone. Okay, so that's number one, just to understand what I'm talking about. The mental laws are the same. There are laws of consciousness, the way the mind works, that we can observe. the mental law starts out by just sitting in a chair. If you go back to, you have looked at it a bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first two laws are just to understand the mechanism of mind, that thoughts arise and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that people, if they don't believe me, again, we're talking about impersonal phenomena. If you don't believe me, please don't believe me. Test these things for yourself. And then I say, get a chair and sit down and look at a white wall.
Yeah.
And tell yourself, I'm not going to think for the next 5 minutes. You can't do it. Anybody who is trying to meditate knows that that's not possible. So you discover that thoughts arise and disappear. You can't make that not happen. In other words, that's an impersonal phenomena.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knows what a thought is, but we all have them. They come and go.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to buy milk. Oh, I have a stomach ache. Oh, my boyfriend said this. Oh, again. All right.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I say to people is, so now that you have confirmed for yourself that you can't stop thinking, please go back to this chair on the white wall again and do it one more time. And notice this time that these thoughts arise and disappear, but you're still there. This is actually the most important transformative understanding of all, to understand that you are the consciousness, you are the witness who I have thoughts. They come and go, but I am not my thoughts. Most people today are so attached and identified with their thoughts. That's why the Buddha says ignorance is the cause of suffering. In other words, when we identify with our thoughts, we get to experience what we are attached to. But if you look closely, you can watch, oh, I have a stomach ache, and that thought disappears. Oh, I forgot to buy carrots, and that thought disappears. But you're still there. I mean, whether you feel good or you feel bad, whether you have a cold or a stomach ache or you're mad at your boyfriend or whatever the thing becomes, you're still there. So that is the major discovery. Most people don't know that. They are so identified with their thinking.
Yeah, and their mind. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, therefore, once you understand this, you have the opportunity, the freedom to stand back and look at your thoughts and ask yourself, does this serve me? Does it have anything to do with reality? Is this the way that in other words, our thoughts, they are determining our experience as long as we are so attached to them.
Yeah.
And that's why meditation, or like Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, all these teachers, we all are saying the same, that it is the most transformative, powerful experience is sitting quietly, doing nothing, and observing this phenomena. Because only then can you actually do something about it.
Because it's the big difference also, Barbara, if you say like the victim of the mind and the master of the mind. So the victim of the mind is sort of like, I'm letting these thoughts control me, and the master of the mind is like, no, I'm going to control the thoughts.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. When you as long as you cannot understand this mechanism, you are an unconscious victim of the mind. You are so identified with your thoughts and beliefs that it's like they've got you by the nose and they're leading you around. But in the moment that you can sit back and observe that there's a difference between the thoughts arising and disappearing and me, the field of consciousness in which they arise, then you can be more selective. In other words, you can start asking yourself questions. Is this true? Does it have anything to do with reality? Does it serve me? And if you have read the whole mental laws book, at the end, the last mental law is no thought is true. Because every thought is just a positionality and interpretation based on, I have many of those examples in the book, hot or cold, feeling good or feeling lousy, compared to what, like, okay, it's freezing cold here in Denmark, but now I saw on the news that they're having this terrible storm in the United States where it's minus 50 degrees and blah, blah, blah in Colorado. So compared to that, it's really hot in Denmark.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. What are we comparing our thoughts to? Yeah.
Everything is this comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say health or sickness, it's the same. Okay, I have a terrible headache today. It's awful. Yeah, but compared to somebody who's dying with cancer, you're probably in great shape. Or so it's all relative.
Yeah. And do you also feel like there was something that we were chatting about before we were talking about doing this episode? I said to you, like, yeah, it's also so interesting because I think a lot of times we would never talk to our friends like we talk to ourselves. Like we can be so hard on ourselves and being so critical of ourselves. Is that mainly also coming from the mind and thoughts, you think? Like
mainly coming from what?
From the mind and the thoughts as well. Like, do they control?
But again, it's more your programming and what it is your belief system is, that what is it that you need to live up to? What is it's this arbitrary standards about how perfect you have to be a good human being. I mean, all of that, it's kill me now. I mean, the worst is the self-criticism.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the solutions of Gandhi and all the wise one, karma yoga, that our intention to serve, the only thing that we can be the master of is in every now moment, what is our intention? In other words, am I choosing this pathway because I want to be a benefit to my fellow human beings, or I'm only interested in self-gain or profit? Or, I mean, so again, what is the motivation for what you're doing? That you are the master of.
Yeah.
And then, as Gandhi always said, but once you start to serve the way that you feel is the highest and best that you can conceive of, we cannot control the results, obviously. I mean, that's up to the universe.
Yeah.
So to be mindful of your intention and to be is the highest and best version of you that you can conceive of, that you can do something about. That is your job. But once you are in alignment with that, then the universe decides. So if your sense of self-worth is based on results, then you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, but I think it's such a competitive world, isn't it also, Barbara? Like always having to compete with, always that feeling of like, I need to be better, I need to be bigger. So maybe some people do have that sort of trap for themselves that you just described.
Well, I usually say it like this. It's the difference between understanding that you have inherent worth or what I call performance-based worth. And most people, in other words, inherent worth is that each one of us is a divine soul that has incarnated, and that we can't be more or less worthy than life because we are life. It's not something you can add to or detract from, but none of us learn that because we're born into societies and a world where everything is performance-based, that we judge each other by. And then I don't know if we've talked about this, but there's 3 levels, as you could say, of performance-based worth. I thought people have different levels of consciousness. So the lower levels of performance-based worth is always, how much money do you make? How much material success do you have? What kind of car do you drive? How beautiful is your house?
Yeah.
And so all the things that money can buy, that people judge each other by that. Then the next level, as people evolve a bit more, the next level of performance-based worth is that we start to judge each other by what kind of a job we have, what is our profession, how do we perform in terms, he's a school teacher, or he's a doctor, or he's a writer, or a politician, so it's not so much what you have, but what you do. And that's still performance-based worth.
Yeah.
Then on the highest level, it's much more, what kind of a human being are you? Like the Dalai Lama, good human qualities, that we judge each other more by our kindness and loving kindness and all these good qualities. We start to get, but still you could say that all of these 3 levels are still performance-based worth. And that the true foundation, you could say, of all democracies are really inherent worth, that each person is a divine manifestation that has a right to be here, and that we don't have to prove ourselves. But
Yeah.
it's a really, really big stumbling block for everyone I talk to. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
really need to work on that. And
Yeah.
actually, in my new book about what did I do with this one? The one that's coming out,
Healthy models for relationships.
It has a lot about this inherent worth and performance-based worth and healthy
Oh, very
self-esteem
good.
and
Interesting.
the
Yeah.
evolution of consciousness. There's a lot about that in his
Yeah.
book.
No, because I think also the more we develop a better relationship with ourselves, of course, we're going to have better relationships with others as well. It's all really based on that, I would say. So no, that's really and we'll definitely also, for everybody listening, we'll give a link to your beautiful book, The Mental Laws, that you're
Yeah,
giving
so
away.
so it's a giveaway as an ebook. So all you have to
Yeah.
do is send us an email to
Yeah.
info@beamteam.com. You'll put up the info.
Yeah, I
And
will.
then
I
just
will tell
write
people.
the
Yeah.
mental laws in
Yeah.
the subject line.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And maybe we can go to some audience questions, sweet Barbara, because we had, like, I posted about you and having this chat today, and then we will this will be released on the 1st of January. I forgot to tell you, Happy New Year, Barbara! Happy New Year! The New Year's episode.
Same to you. Knock 'em dead, my dear.
So maybe this is like this is someone who hasn't read your mental laws, but they're asking, what is the best way to organize our thoughts and our plan of actions in order to achieve what we want in life?
To organize our thoughts and
so what's the best way to organize our thoughts and, in a way, our plan of actions in order to achieve what we want in life? Like, how do we organize ourselves to get there?
So first of all, we have to go back to what we were talking about before. It's important to understand where you're coming from. In other words, what is your focus in terms of this achievement? How much are you worrying and how much are you focusing on the good that you can achieve and your vision for what you can? So in other words, I would suggest that you focus on your strengths, on your offering, what it is. But once you have you could make a list of, well, actually, in my book, The Road to Power, I have this Napoleon Hill exercise from his famous book, Think and Grow Rich. There's a really good exercise about making a plan, understanding what it is exactly that you want to achieve, how much money you want to earn, and then make a definite plan for, again, you never get anything for us. So in other words, what are you going to give? What is your offering? What is your service, your product, whatever it is? And it has to, I've also found out, because I've used this a lot myself, you have to make your vision something that's realistic to you. If you take too big a leap, in other words, if you millions or whatever, if you go too far and it's something that you actually can't believe, it's not going to work. So you have to make a kind of, again, I always say, we can stretch ourselves a bit, but it has to be believable. And then once you have this plan, which I outline actually in the book, that you write down exactly what you're going to do, what your product is, what your service is, and all of this, and how much you want to earn, and that you have a specific amount of time, like by the end of, you give yourself a year, for example. But then once you have done this, so in other words, first formulate it, but then the most important part is to program yourself, to program some subconscious mind that this is what's going to happen. And so this is where affirmations and creative visualization comes in. The Napoleon Hill exercise, for example, which I did for many years, that you wrote down this plan and you pasted it on a piece of cardboard and you had it next to your bed. And then every morning, and the first thing in the morning, you wake up and you read your plan. But then we come to the really thing is that you have to feel, when you visualize this happening, you have to feel it happening in the present moment, and you have to feel the feeling of success, prosperity, whatever that feeling is. Because if you if it's only mental, all of these things, if it's only mental, it's not going to work. It has to have the feeling.
Yeah.
So whether it's business success, personal success, health, whatever it is that you're working on, power of the mind has to be connected to feeling. It has to trigger that.
Yeah.
For example, in my books, I have this famous affirmation every day, in every way, I am getting better
and better.
Yeah, the Kue one. That's not mine. And that you have to say it 3 times a day, 15 times a day with feeling.
Yeah.
It's a great affirmation. If you think about what it says every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. That's a great one, right? It doesn't say anything specific, but it's going. So, but you can't say every day. It's got to be.
You got to really have it inside of you.
So anyone who is making plans, if you have catastrophic thinking or if you're thinking negatively, you have to work on. So again, we still come back to the key to everything is good energy.
Yeah.
Everything is about good energy.
Yeah.
And you're the only one who knows when you have good energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to really be aware of, I mean, when you're up there, I mean, when you're in alignment with who you really are, you just feel good. You have that power. You have access to that.
Yeah.
And when you don't have access, it's not a good idea. It's not a good time to try to call somebody to make appointments. I always say to people, don't initiate anything until you got your energy up there.
Yeah. Exactly. Work on your energy first before you do anything.
Yes. So whatever it takes, for some people, it's, prayer and meditation. For other people, it's going for a run or watching a movie and distractions. Whatever it takes for you to get yourself out of whatever rut you're in or negative thinking.
Yeah.
So you got to break through that.
Yeah. So organizing your thoughts, specifically when you're planning your future, should be done in good energy.
That's in good energy. Don't do it when you're feeling depressed.
Yeah.
When you're worried, that's the worst time. Yeah. So to imagine the best possible outcome that you can believe, that not that somebody else can believe, that you can believe in relationship to reality where you are now. I did that exercise for many years and it was really amazing. I made exactly the amount of money that
you described it in your book. It's incredible.
And then every year I raised it, but I didn't raise it that much because I realized it had to be what I could believe in.
But I think like manifestation is a powerful thing also, isn't it? Like I think there's also a story of Jim Carrey where he said something about like putting an amount he wanted to make in 10 years or something. And he put that on a paper in his pocket and it was exactly what he made from one of his famous movies. And, and he still has that piece of paper and showed it. And it is, I mean, we can definitely manifest something and
you can say, and the other way around, you can say we cannot not manifest because everything that's happening in the outer is coming from, it's all the time. It's an out picturing. It's an out picturing of what you've got going on in here. Because if you go back to the nature of reality, the field of pure potentiality, the quantum field, whatever you want to call it, as a quantum physics has also proven that the field is infinite, undying energy. And that I write about it in the mental laws again, that they have proven now the Heisenberg principle, that the field of pure potentiality manifests time, space, events when there is an observer. So our power of observation, in other words, the way we look at things, that forms the field. It's a scientific fact.
Again, a law.
So again, so
makes sense.
You can't not manifest. That's not possible.
And I think it's also really important to come back to that as well. I think, and to know for people, like, how can I have good energy? What can I do to have good energy? I think sometimes we forget that a little bit, or
the quickest way to have good energy, the fastest route, instant manifestation, is gratitude. That's the number one thing.
I said
gratitude lists. what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
The more you do that, you change your energy immediately. You can't feel gratitude and feel scared at the same time. They don't, the frequencies don't match.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I say gratitude, I mean, in other words, just think about, we human beings were really, really strange. I said, we have like 10 million things we could be thankful for.
Yeah.
And when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is we think about the one or two things in our lives that we
don't
are worried about. That
yeah,
we don't
exactly.
Want.
Yeah.
So when I say gratitude list, I mean be really specific.
Yeah.
And, like I got food in my refrigerator. I have heat in my apartment.
Yeah.
I have a lovely tree outside my window. You have a beautiful cat to play with. I have a computer. I have a cell phone. I have nice
connected to
all
people.
The things
exactly.
that you take for granted.
Yeah. No, that's another really good tip for people, I think, the attitude of gratitude. Because I've been saying that especially the end of the year, where people are now so focused on like Christmas shopping and over consuming and like, and going to people that they don't even really want to be with, but they have to, that kind of stuff. Where I'm like, actually, this is a good time to reflect and to rest and to be grateful
for. The Beam team, we have had a New Year's ceremony where when with the rockets. When the fireworks, the ones where you launch them.
Yeah.
So when we would gather a group of people, and then every person would come with their manifestation list, what they wanted to manifest for them in the new year.
Yeah.
And you can share them with each other, but you don't have to. And then I live right near Copenhagen Harbor, so you can walk from here down to the water. So then each person would get a rocket, and then they would put their manifestation, they would tape it on.
So nice.
And then we
go right to the sky.
And then we go,
that's it. Transfer it to the universe. Woo! That's really beautiful. Because that's another thing. That's something that it was a question from someone, but I also think about it a lot. Like, how do we go from, like a lot of us say, like, I hope that next year this will be. And I think we need to go more to, I know this is going to be, like how do we sort of, is that also, again, a mind training to get it's from hoping to knowing?
But it's also trusting that we cannot see the end of all things. That's a really important part of all this.
Yeah.
Often we're so short-sighted in our view that that we cannot see. For example, as I said, when people are in crisis, it's usually the open door to major change in their life.
Yeah.
So it's also a way of trusting that there's good for me, but I cannot decide. This whole idea that we have to decide in advance and know, it really trips us up. So in other words, to be more open in your mind. In other words, who knows what's good or bad?
Yeah.
You cannot see the end of all things. What is it? What are the hidden gifts in this situation? What is it that, why is the universe presenting me with this? What am I supposed to learn? Because everyone has a very rigid idea usually about, I have to have this and this and this. I have to do that and that and that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be happy, or I'm going to be a failure, or whatever people have going. And that's not serving us. It's not sanity. Yeah. Because again, the universe is so much bigger than we are. We cannot see the end of all things.
Yeah. That's a really good thing. That's a really good thing. You never know what's around the corner in a way.
No.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. Because I think that's something on a lot of people's minds, of like.
Yeah, but again, it's this rigid thinking. So letting go, trusting. Again, it's not that please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that we should be passive. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do the highest and best that we can conceive of in every situation. We should. That's what our life is about. But once we have done that, to let go and let God, in other words, fully and freely release, lose, let go, and let God, because it's going to happen anyway. So you do.
I'm not in control of that.
No, exactly. It's the control thing that really, really gives us so much anguish.
Yeah, exactly, and so much stress. Yeah. And do you feel like, so this was the last question, this will be we have a few more, but this will be my last question from people that were listening, is also about money. It's like, do we need to change our relationship with money in order to be, to be more abundant or to have more money? Like, what is your thought on that?
Well, you could say money is just a symbol of the abundance of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of a piece of paper that but now it's all electronic, so we don't even have pieces of paper anymore. So it's gone.
Yeah.
But again, so to be in the flow of stuff, how do we do that? That's really so it's the focus on, like that money can only come to me through a specific channel and a specific way, that we block it, in fact. So so the fact that, one of my favorite affirmations is money comes to me from all directions. That's a really good one. It's really worked for me.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I have to make it through teaching this yoga class, or I have to make it through selling these books, or I have to make it through, to be open for new channels, new sources, new content. I mean, for my example, this past year, it just came out of the blue, is I got contacted by this big company that wants to do audiobooks for all my books. I wasn't thinking about that at all.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about money comes to me from all directions. Sometimes I think, yes.
Yeah.
Because suddenly I got contacted by this or by that. So don't limit your channels. Don't limit your idea about where it can come from.
Yeah. That's really beautiful, actually. That's really good advice.
Open to the goodness, the infinite possibilities, the field of pure potentiality.
Yeah.
How can I serve, and see what shows up?
Yeah. That's really good. And that's a really good advice too. Yeah.
So you could also say random acts of kindness. And again, it shouldn't be with a thought that you're going to get something out of it, but it often happens that random acts of kindness opens new doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're loving and kind, just because it feels good. And that, again, you could also say that the biggest problem, the biggest challenge, or whatever we want to call it, that we have on planet Earth, is that we need people with higher energy to help lift the collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And so having good energy is not just helping yourself, it's
helping the whole collective.
Exactly, because the higher frequencies are much more powerful than the lower. So
I always think that as well.
One loving thought counterbalances hundreds of negative.
Yeah, exactly. It's a shared humanity as well, right? Like believing in the collective good, like
exactly.
That's definitely,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So the good of one is the good of all.
Yeah.
The good of one is the good of all.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. So all of these high thoughts to keep our consciousness on this high level, that's the most important. Yeah. Everything that manifests around us in the outer is not the cause. So again, we have to take our power back and not only react to the outer, because then we're just confirming what we don't want. We have to take control from the inner and watch the outer change. Yeah, that's it. From the inner and watch the outer change. Amazing advice. Well, I think those people who had their question answered are very happy with the answers. I mean, that was really clear and beautiful advice for everyone, Barbara. Thank you so much. And I thought to close with, I know that you were very passionate about this, and you already mentioned it a little bit, but like what's happening in the world now with the Ukrainian, with the war with Ukraine and Russia, and like, do you want to share some of your thoughts on that, and like maybe give us, is there anything we can do as talking about the collective good? People ask me that all the time. They come and they're feeling a lot of anguish and despair. And I mean, some people say they can't really watch TV very much because they can only take a small dose of, I mean, when we think about what is going on. Yeah,
it's insane.
So I tried to make a list of what I thought we could do. So you want to hear my list?
Yes, I'd love to hear your list. Yeah. Bring on the list, Barbara.
So first of all, again, so in other words, in face of this Russian aggression and destruction of this country and 44 million people, without, now they don't have electricity and heat and, I mean, water. We're talking about unfucking believable.
Yeah.
I mean, hello, excuse my French. But anyway, so what can we do, each individual? Because we would like to do something. I don't know anyone who wouldn't like to help in some way. So number one on my list is this, as far as I can see, these are the things we can do. You can go to Ukraine and fight. I mean, if you're young and strong and healthy and brave and you have the courage, you can go. I mean, I've heard about people and actually know one who actually has gone down to fight. So that's a possibility. What else could you do? You could, if you don't want to go and fight, in principle, you could go and be a volunteer on the borders of Ukraine, especially in Poland when all those 2 million people came. But people are coming again now because of the fact they don't have warmth, they don't have electricity. There's going to be more refugees now. So you could, in principle, if you're strong enough and brave enough, go to the one of the bordering countries and join. There are different organizations that one can join. I mean, the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders. There are many good people already doing stuff. So that we also can do. But if you're not want to do something physically like that, the next thing that you can do, which is really, really important, you can donate money. However much you can donate, do it. I have discovered that there's this, that the President Zelensky, he has set up, it's called United 24. And it's a really interesting website because you can get the news about, but when you click on United 24 to donate, you have different options. You can donate for weapons. You can donate for anti-drone campaigns. You can donate for medical aid. You can donate for helping the children. I mean, he has food and supplies. And so if you don't want to donate for weapons, you can donate for more peaceful things like medical care. And so it's a really good website and it's set up by them. So that's also something you can do. And I think that in terms of generating more money for yourself, the age-old principle of tithing, which is traditionally people gave 1/10 of their income after tax to some good cause or to a spiritual teacher or something. So in principle, giving a little money to Ukraine is also opening a channel for yourself. So in other words, if we can give, what we can also receive. So it's important, again, to understand that energy circulates and giving and receiving are part of the flow. So a good way to stimulate money coming to you is giving money from you. So, but okay, so, but besides all of that, giving money or donating or whatever, then there's also what can we do where we are? In other words, we can pressure our own governments to give more money to Ukraine or send more weapons or give more aid. So we should be vocal in supporting politicians or whatever who stand for this.
Exactly. That's a really good
and then you can also pressure on the governments to put tighter sanctions on Russia, whatever they can do. And then we can also volunteer in our home countries, wherever we are, to help the refugees who come where we are living. I mean, they're coming refugees to the UK and to Holland and to Denmark.
Absolutely.
So what can we do there? And then we can also, I mean, I live right by I live in the embassy quarter of Copenhagen. The Russian embassy is just down the street. So every time there's a demonstration, I go there.
Exactly.
So we have to make ourselves
vocal.
So these are all
That's a really good list.
So in other words, don't do what you can, where you are with the means that you have.
Absolutely. No, and it is, I mean, we have to do something because it's been, and I think, it's just, as you were saying, it's unfucking believable in the sense that it's just crazy. I find it amazing that, this man can just do this without being stopped. Like what world do we live in that's in 2022 still something that can just happen, and I think that it's crazy.
Because Putin has nuclear weapons. That's the only thing. Otherwise, everybody would go in and But
Yeah.
all the heads of government are afraid of that.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also understandable, of course, but it's just a crazy thing. And yeah, and another tip that I would have for listeners is also, I mean, it's about Syria, but there's a beautiful movie on Netflix at the moment called The Swimmers, and it's about these two sisters, and they're actually it's about the Syrian war, and they actually also, you know, escape Syria, and they do it by water, as many people do, and they swim their way out of, you know, yeah, and it's unbelievable. And one of the girls actually becomes an Olympian champion later on and it's amazing. Her father, which I think is really beautiful for us, her father says to her, find your lane and swim your race.
No, that's where you got it from.
And I was like, for me, it was so like, that's exactly what I feel life is, you know, like, it's like, go do it, you know. And this girl, I mean, in all of her circumstances, and I think, I mean, I come from a rich country, like I grew up in Holland. We never ever were afraid of war, ever. And I don't think we can't even think about it. I have good friends, and two friends of mine that are refugees, and I've become very close with. And when I hear their stories, I mean, it just breaks my heart. And it's just unbelievable. Like we can't get our little rich, you know, little heads around that. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I know that I'm privileged, and I know that I'm, you know, it's just a horrible thing. So I think that your list and, you know, watching this movie,
well,
like
actually,
I hope that, you know.
The last thing on my list is maybe the most important one that I didn't say yet. Can I say that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, so the last thing in my list is to, I don't know if I should say pray for peace, but send healing energy to, I said, I have a group of people that I meditate with every day at 3:00 in the afternoon. Everyone is welcome to join, but it's only 10 minutes from 3:00 to 10 minutes past 3.
Nice.
And we focus on wherever we are, we stop and we focus on healing energy, both for ourselves and each others and for our friends and families, but then to send it out to Ukraine, for example, or to the women in Iran, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
All these places. So it's important to daily to take the world in your hands and envision peace and harmony and brotherly, sisterly love. I mean, that's what we all want, and that's what we're all dreaming of. But we have to also see it and believe it. So
yeah, exactly. That's a wonderful thing to do, and I think that that's definitely not to be underestimated. How much power can be in that, like coming together, meditating together, or setting out an intention together, lighting a candle together, and just, you know, be really aware of like, I want this for the world, you know, like definitely. Because that's, I mean, I always feel that, but like also again, like after seeing the movie as well, I was just so like, my God, we need to do something. Like this cannot happen to people, and we can't just, people are drowning in our oceans, you know, and we, you know, it's just a horrific thing, you know. And I think that we do have the power to change that, and have, you know, we have love in our hearts. If we have that, and wanting that, just really wanting that craving of peace, I think is something we should have, you know. So yeah, thank you for that, Barbara. That's a really beautiful, I'm grateful to hear that you do that every day. That's wonderful.
Well, really thank beautiful. You. Thank you for having me on, and blessings to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and knowledge and your beautiful stories, and just, you know, you're such an incredible being, and I'm always so grateful that I get to end the year and in a way begin the year with you. So and for all listeners, please, I'll give the website to Barbara. She's incredible. Buy her books, you know, go check her out, go to the website, ask for this mental loss to be sent to you, because it is wonderful. Will change your life forever. Hope you're ready for that.
Yes,
we're ready for that forever. Oh my goodness. And a beautiful 2023 to all of you out there. I hope it's going to be an amazing year for everyone. And again, think of the collective good, peace to all, and really just be good to yourself and be good to others. That's what I'm saying. So thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you for being on the episode. And thank you all listeners for listening to this first episode of 23. And so much love to you all. You know the drill. Be good to yourself, be good to others, especially the animals. Bye. Thank you all so very much for listening to Go For Your Life. I really appreciate it. And if you liked it, you know what to do.
please leave a review, leave a comment, share it amongst friends, do whatever you can do to support me and this podcast, because it is my life. Thank you very much, Miguel, for doing the editing. Thank you so much, Maria, for your beautiful designs. Thank you, Sparky, for being the best co-host ever. Thank you, Animals Worldwide, for your daily inspiration to keep me going, for always putting that fuel in me. Thank you so, so much, because we know the drill, right? Namaste, vegan. Go, 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 go.